Hey guys, tonight we step into the glow of a fire where the sparks drift like falling stars and the old stories settle in your chest like soft thunder. You're sitting cross-legged beneath a wide African sky, red dust clinging to your robes, listening to the low, rhythmic hum of the griot, the keeper of memory. His voice cracks like dry wood but rolls smooth as honey, weaving your name into an ancient tapestry. You don't know it yet, but this tale is yours. You're not a warrior not yet. You're a child. A boy, some say, born wrong. Limp limbs. A twisted foot. Too quiet. Too still. But even now, the firelight flickers differently when it touches your skin. Even now, strangers glance at you longer than they mean to, because they've heard. Everyone has. They say the lion has returned. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is, especially if it's after midnight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Mande world is not a calm one. Empires rise and fall faster than you can blink in the desert wind. But your story, Sundiata Keita's story, starts not with armies or thrones, but with a whisper. A prediction. A thing spoken into the dark and believed. Your father is King Magan Konfata of Niani, a respected Mandinka ruler with plenty of advisors and not enough patience for riddles. So, naturally, when a wandering hunter barefoot, dirt-caked and apparently fond of vague statements arrives at court to deliver a prophecy, he doesn't exactly get the royal welcome. The king will marry an ugly woman, the hunter says, and she will bear a lion. Oh, good. Magan raises an eyebrow, probably thinking he should start charging these guys rent. But the hunter doesn't blink. He insists that the future of Malithi, very empire yet to exist, depends on this marriage. The lion child will not be born from the king's beautiful wife. Not the one with the shiny teeth and the 5-octave laugh. No, it will be born from a woman with the back of a buffalo and the face of the moon after a storm. And guess what? She's coming. A year passes, maybe two. One day, as if scripted by fate's most dramatic intern, a hunchbacked woman with a limp and skin like storm clouds is brought to the court. Her name is Sogolon. People whisper. She's strange. She's wild. Her hair never quite behaves. But the hunter's words echo louder now, and the king remembers. He marries her. You are born not screaming, but silent. Your eyes flicker like coals, your body twisted and slow. You do not walk. You do not speak. Other children chase birds. You watch clouds. Nurses shake their heads. Courtiers murmur. Your brothers thrive. You do not much, and yet your name. It means something. Sundiata. Hungry lion. A mainstream historical fact. Sundiata Keita is widely recognized as the founder of the Mali Empire in the 13th century, uniting various Mande peoples into a single kingdom that would dominate West Africa for centuries. But tonight, you're not a king. You're a boy crawling across a dirt floor. At court, your father dies, and the throne passes not to you because, well, people don't tend to hand crowns to children who can't stand but to your half-brother Danker and Tumen, born of the king's first wife. That part goes smoothly. It's what happens next that gets spicy. The Queen Mother Sasuma Berete, your stepmother, is delighted. A bit too delighted. She does not like your mother, and she hates that people whisper about you, the child who was prophesied. The lion cub, lying still. She spreads rumors like wildfire in dry grass. That boy, she says, he'll never stand, he'll never fight. His bones are made of flour and stubbornness. Meanwhile, your mother does not argue. She simply watches. Her eyes don't flicker. She doesn't plead. She just waits. And you crawl. You sit in the shadows. You chew things you shouldn't. Once, a priest tries to exorcise you with goat spit. You mostly sleep through it. And yet, something inside you is beginning. There's a fringe tale told by griots in only the sleepiest of towns about how Sundiata once looked a lion in the eye before he could walk and did not flinch. No one believes it, of course, but it's a good story. You grow, slowly. Your mother starts taking you to the market, and the other boys laugh. They call you Snail. They throw pebbles. One boy kicks over the cane she carved for you. You don't cry. You just stare. Historians still argue whether Sundiata truly suffered from a childhood disability, or whether the tale was woven in after his rise as a metaphor for unlikely greatness. But whether real or mythologized, this part of your story matters, because the fall makes the rise more satisfying. And so one day it happens. You're around 7 or 8. A brutal, dry wind cuts across Nyani. The millet is sparse, people are irritable, and you ask for an iron rod. Not a toy, a staff. Your mother hesitates, but she makes it. The village watches as you dig it into the earth. Plant your hands, grit your teat hand, rise. You rise. Your knees tremble, your eyes burn, your robes sag in the dust. But you stand like the sky itself gave you permission. Slowly, step by step, you move forward. You lean on the rod like it's a sword. And for the first time, the other children fall silent. You walk toward the sacred baobab tree. You do not just stand, you uproot its branch. Because why not go full legendary while you're at it? People gasp. Someone faints. Your stepmother's cup shatters on the palace floor. And in that moment, the tide turns. You're no longer the boy who crawls. You're the lion cub who has begun to prowl. From then on, things move faster. You train with the warriors. You learn the bow, the spear, the words that bind kings to fate. You don't speak much, but when you do, people listen. And that, friend, is dangerous. Because queens who scheme and half-brothers who inherited too easily don't like it when lions start growing teeth. So, when you're just old enough to understand power but not yet old enough to wield it, your mother grabs your hand, wraps you in traveling cloth, and flees into exile. Because you're not safe here anymore. And Molly isn't ready for you yet. But don't worry, it will be. Because the lion is walking now, and the world should probably look out. Exile doesn't feel like exile at first. It feels like walking too far in the wrong shoes, like sleeping under leaves, like your mother's hand gripping yours a little too tightly. It feels like trying not to look back, because if you do, you'll see the palace, the baobab, the cane you no longer need. And that will hurt more than the blisters. You don't get a dramatic goodbye, no farewell feast, no parade of tearful loyalists swearing they'll wait for your return. You just leave, quietly, one step after the next, a bundle on your back. Your mother silent beside you. And your little sister, yes, you have one carried in your arms for half the journey, drooling on your shoulder like a sainted melon. Your exile takes you across the savannah, the scrublands, and into the hearts of kingdoms that barely know your name. You pass herders who've never heard of Nyani, fishermen who only know water and wind, markets where no one looks twice at a limping boy in dusty robes. It's humbling, and it's exactly what you need. Because in Nyani, you were a symbol, a whispered prophecy, a threat. Out here, you're just a kid trying to learn how not to burn millet, and failing, spectacularly. But slowly, the rhythm settles. Your mother, Sagalan, finds work as a healer. She's quiet, but her hands know things herbs don't. She listens to the wind and answers questions no one dares to ask out loud. People respect her. They don't love her, but they respect her. You, meanwhile, start to gather things. Not gold, not titles. Wisdom. And friends, in the small kingdom of Mema, you find your feet literally. Your gait strengthens, your back straightens. You begin to train again with wooden spears and real ones. The king there kind, gruff, a bit impatient, sees something in you. Maybe it's your restraint. Maybe it's the fact you don't flinch when a soldier swings a staff at your ribs. You don't block it either, but you're learning. There's a quiet moment, years later, when that same king hands you a ceremonial dagger and says, "For someone who claims not to want power, you're quite good at earning trust." You thank him, then immediately try to remember where you left the ceremonial sheath. In this land, you're not royal. You're not sacred. You're just helpful. You solve arguments by listening more than talking. You learn the names of animals from hunters and the signs of rain from farmers. You help a widow move a cart, and later she gives you honeyed bread. You start to understand how kingdoms breathe. Mainstream historical fact. Sundiata spent his early life in exile after his stepmother maneuvered her own son onto the throne. This period was key in forming alliances and gathering the wisdom he would later use to found the Mali Empire. The learning isn't always elegant. You once try to herd goats, and they immediately scatter like it's a game of hide from the future emperor. You get tricked into trading your sandals for what turns out to be a rock covered in melted sugar. You trip over your own shadow during a local wrestling match, twice. But no one calls you weak anymore. They just laugh. Then hand you a stick and tell you to try again. There's a fringe tale that says, during this time, you once arm wrestled a tree and won. Obviously untrue, but adorable. Historians still argue whether Sundiata was a political hostage in some of the courts he visited or a welcome guest. The truth, as usual, is probably somewhere in the middle. Power likes to keep options nearby. And you, quiet and observant, were always a very promising option. Your mother watches you change. She still doesn't speak much, still braids her hair like a map of rivers, still listens more than she talks. But now she moves slower. Her hands tremble when she ties bundles. Her eyes linger on you as if trying to memorize the shape of your face, like she's not sure how much time she has left. And then, one morning, she doesn't wake up. She lies beneath a blue cloth, hands folded, her amulets placed carefully beside her. You sit beside her for a long time. You don't cry, not loudly. You just listen to the wind and remember the stories she never quite told. You bury her near a tamarind tree. It takes all day to dig, because you refuse help. Your fingers bleed. You don't care. You sit beside the grave until night wraps itself around your shoulders. And only then do you whisper, "I wasn't ready." No one ever is. From then on, you walk differently, straighter, heavier, as if your spine has inherited her will. You stop letting others cook your food. You start training longer. You stop waiting to be told what to do. You begin leading. At first, it's subtle. You speak up during a council dispute. Your solution is both simple and completely infuriating to both sides, which means it's probably correct. You organize a food rotation during a drought. You teach younger boys to throw spears farther by adjusting their stance, because it turns out limping your whole childhood makes you very aware of weight distribution. And slowly, Mema begins to lean on you. The king makes you a military advisor, not in name too political, but in function. You plan campaigns, lead skirmishes. You even broker a peace with a rival kingdom that involved 3 goats, a broken harp, and a long discussion about which songs are too sacred to parody. And then, one day, a traveler arrives. He's dusty, sunburnt, half-starved, but his words are sharp. He brings news from Mali. Your homeland isn't just in trouble, it's being crushed. Suma Oro Kante, the sorcerer king of Soso, has conquered it. A man who wears skulls as accessories and believes fear is a more reliable currency than coin. A king who, if the whispers are true, talks to spirits and sometimes listens. He has taken Niani. He has installed fear like furniture. Your people? Scattered. Silenced. And your half-brother? Gone. Fled or worse. The hunteries, the same kind of wandering, ash-footed, proverb-mumbling hunter who predicted your birthlings in and says, "It is time." You stare at the fire. You say nothing. But inside, something sharp and ancient clicks into place. Suma Oro rules with sorcery? Fine. Let him. You'll answer with strategy. And steel. And the memory of a mother who said nothing, because she trusted everything. A quirky tidbit from the oral tradition claims that during this period of awakening, Sundiata would meditate under a tree for 3 days without food before making any major decision. Another version says he once fasted until a bird landed on his shoulder and chirped exactly 9 times. Either way, the man was decisive. You don't return to Mali immediately. You're not reckless. You know one lion cannot challenge a demon king knot yet. So you begin to send word to old allies, to kings who owe you favors, to warriors who remember your mother's medicine, to those who remember the promise of a better Mali. One by one, they respond. Some send scouts, others send horses, a few send coded messages inside bags of grain, but the message is always the same. We're ready. Historians still argue whether these alliances were formed out of loyalty, desperation, or the sheer charisma of Sundiata himself. Probably all three. You're not just a king in waiting anymore. You're a symbol of return, of resistance, of something sacred crawling back from exile. You gather your closest companions. Your half-sister, now grown and sharper than a double-edged proverb, rides beside you. A blacksmith's son who once beat you in a wrestling match joins as your right hand. A mute archer who communicates only in eyebrow raises offers his bow. You trust them more than you trust luck. You look out across the desert, and it no longer feels like exile. It feels like staging, like prelude, like the pause before thunder. Because you're not just going home, you're going back to fix what was broken. You're going to build what should have been. And this time, you're not crawling. You're not hiding. You're walking, straight toward the storm. You wake up before dawn, your breath fogging the chill in the air, listening to the soft stir of your companions breaking camp. You're no longer in exile. You're on a path. And though it doesn't yet have a name, it carries the weight of a kingdom on its shoulders. This is the road to reclaim Mali. You stretch your limbs. They ache, but not in the old way, not the way they used to. This ache is earned. This ache means you've been training, building, waiting. Every callus on your palm is a promise. Today is the day you will stand taller than prophecy. But before that, breakfast. Because nobody conquers tyrants on an empty stomach, your half-sister serves you roasted millet cakes with honey. The blacksmith's son, now your war captain, grunts about the grain being too dry. The mute archer gestures with his eyes toward a hawk overhead. You nod, not because you understand, but because somehow, that guy's always right. You head east. You visit the kingdom of Tabon. A humble chief greets you with uncertainty in his eyes, as if trying to square the boy from old whispers with the man standing before him. You offer not threats, not gold, but a question. Will you join me in making Mali whole again? He hesitates until your sister speaks. And oh, when she speaks, the air holds still to listen. She recounts how Suma Oro flayed men in public squares, how he burned groves sacred to the spirits, how he used women like coin. The chief's lips tighten. He nods. That's one. The next few are harder. You ride through kingdoms that remember only chaos. Some rulers call you a ghost. Others call you dangerous. One laughs and throws a chicken at your feet. Big mistake. The next morning, he wakes up to find your war captain has lifted his prize stallion and left behind a perfectly balanced spear with your name carved in it. The message? I could have taken more. He joins you 2 weeks later. You're building a coalition the only way it can be built in a fractured world, one sword, one story, one sacred trust at a time. Mainstream historical fact. Sundiata's return from exile involved a gradual rallying of local kings and warlords who opposed the growing tyranny of Sumaoro Kante, culminating in a large resistance alliance before the Battle of Kirina. You're no longer just Sundiata. You are the keystone holding the hopes of dozens of broken households. The lion who limped but never stopped. Children recite your name while grinding millet. Elders light candles for your victory. But the shadow of Sumaoro grows longer. And we need to talk about this guy. Sumaoro Kanteking of the Soswai ain't your average villain. According to legend, the man kept a chamber of skulls for decoration and whispered to spirits who whispered back. His armies don't just march, they seem to know things. They take towns before word can even spread. You hear tales. His armor is made of dragon hide. He cannot be pierced by arrows. His fortress has no doors. He's immortal. He once made a man explode with a word. Historians still argue whether Sumaoro was a tyrant fueled by fear or simply an effective, ruthless ruler who understood the psychology of dominance. Either way, his reign was marked by heavy taxation, spiritual intimidation, and a flair for the dramatic. You start to notice something, though. As your reputation spreads, some of Sumaoro's allies begin to hesitate. They don't defect outright, but they send letters, messengers, daughters, spices, the usual imperial flirting. They're watching. You keep moving. You don't celebrate. Not yet. Then one night in camp, as the wind shifts and the baobabs creak like old warriors, an emissary from a tiny, far-off village presents you with an old talisman wrapped in red cloth. He tells you, "This belonged to your father. It was hidden when the Saso came. We kept it, waiting for your return." You unwrap it. It's nothing special, just a loop of hide with 3 polished stones. But your hands tremble. You tie it to your wrist. Because this isn't about magic. It's about memory. Quirky fringe tidbit. Some griot traditions claim Sundiata's power was not just in war, but in his ability to speak the right words to the earth. A mystical phrase suggesting he could align his soul with the land itself. You start making more tactical decisions. You're still gathering troops, but now you also position them. You're not just building a rebellion, you're building a war machine. But one powered not by fear, by faith. The 7 kings come next. One by one, rulers from across the Mande territory meet under the moonlight. The gatherings are quiet. The air hums. No formal declarations. No grand speeches. Just warriors sitting around fires, sharpening blades, remembering the days before Sumaoro's darkness. Each king brings something different. One brings cavalry. Another brings rice. One brings his grandmother's drum, older than the oldest village, and says it hasn't sounded for 100 years. Tonight, it does. They all swear. Not to you, but to the Mali that should be. And then it happens. You dream. You see a golden lion-o surprise there and behind it. A line of warriors stretching farther than your eyes can follow. Their eyes glow. Their chests carry old scars. Their swords are wrapped in songs. And you hear it. A drumbeat. Dum, dum, dum. The sound of battle. The sound of return. You wake up with a start. Your sister is already packing. She saw the same dream. Of course she did. You summon the kings. You tell them what they already know. It's time. Time to march. Time to meet the sorcerer in the field. Time to see if the lion still remembers how to roar. Your foot hits the earth like thunder. Behind you, thousands march. Cavalry from the Sahel, horse hooves striking in sync. Hunters from the forests, eyes sharp beneath cowrie-trimmed hats. Spearmen from the river kingdoms, shields painted with sunbursts and crocodiles. Some wear armor of boiled leather. Others march bare, chested, covered in charms and prayers. The army you've built isn't just powerful, it's beautiful. The air itself seems to shimmer with anticipation. This is no band of rebels. This is a movement with a memory. This is Mali, rising, again. You ride at the front, indigo robes fluttering, a staff in one hand and your father's talisman still wrapped around your wrist. You don't give speeches. That's not your style. But when you pass, the men straighten their backs. Even the horses seem to step with more pride. Because the lion is leading them, and they're ready to hunt. The march to Kirina is not fast, but it is steady. You've chosen the battlefield in advance because you know where Somaoro will come from, and you know how he fights. Straightforward? Never. Honorable? Not exactly. Sumaoro doesn't meet his enemies in the open like a soldier. He appears in the night. He burns fields. He hexes entire villages. According to one terrified child you shelter along the way, his soldiers breathe smoke. Your advisors whisper about enchantments, spells, invulnerability. You let them talk. But you also study the terrain. You note the marshlands, the tree cover, the hill to the north that catches the morning sun just so. Because you don't need magic. You have strategy. Mainstream historical fact. The Battle of Kirina in 1235 was a pivotal turning point in West African history, marking the defeat of the Soso king Sumaoro Kante and the rise of the Mali Empire under Sundiata Keita. And so, on a day that begins with dew-soaked grass and distant drums, you reach the edge of Kirina. It doesn't look like history. It looks like tall grass and dragonflies and a slight breeze, but the air tastes like something's watching. You sleep that night in your tent, blade by your side, dreams empty for the first time in weeks. Then morning comes, and with its Sumaoro, he doesn't just arrive, he descends. You wake to smoke on the horizon, a black standard rising like a curse, horns bleeding in a pattern no human should understand. His army is enormous, sharp, tightly ordered, clad in iron masks and red-tipped spears. And at the center, Sumaoro himself. He rides a white horse. His robes shimmer. His face is hidden behind a polished skull mask. And when he lifts his arm, birds fall silent. Sumaoro doesn't roar. He just is. And you, sitting your horse at the top of that grassy hill, feel it. The gravity of destiny. Historians still argue whether the encounter between Sundiata and Sumaoro was military genius, magical duel, or symbolic power shift. Some versions say the sky darkened. Others claim Sundiata used a sacred arrow. What's consistent? That this was no ordinary battle. Your war council meets briefly. Your sister rides up, her face calm. He's here. You nod. The blacksmith's son grins and spits. About time. You divide the army. Hunters in the trees, cavalry to the left, shield wall forward. You hold the high ground and that means vision. That means timing. Sumaoro begins with a charge. His front lines hit like a hammer precision. Brute force, terrifying coordination. Men fall. Horses cry out. For a moment, your line bends. But it doesn't break. Because you knew this would happen. You signal your archers. From the treetops, arrows rain like dry season hail. They whistle through the air and strike with frightening rhythm. A few bounce off iron masks, but many don't. Screams rise. Sumaoro lifts his hand and something shifts. A thick fog rolls over the field. Fast. Too fast to be natural. It swallows your men, blinds your archers, makes the sun vanish. Sumaoro rides through it, untouched, like a phantom. Your horse rears, the line shakes. Your men yell in confusion. And then from the foregone word, now, it's your sister's voice. From the right flank, your cavalry crashes into Sumaoro's side. Not head-on, not straight, slanted, like water rushing through a break in a dam. You've trained them for this. The Iron Army staggers. You ride down into the chaos, spear in hand, sword across your back. You don't swing wildly. You aim. Precise. Surgical. Your presence is a flare your men rally around it. Then you see him. Sumaoro. The man in the skull mask. His horse's hooves don't seem to touch the ground. His eyes glow faintly trick of the light. Spirit? Or something worse? You charge. He turns. And the world holds its breath. You clash. His blade is faster than it should be. It sings when it slices. You parry once barely. Twice you feel the heat radiating from his robes. He whispers something you don't understand, and the wind kicks up, sand blinding you momentarily. But you've studied him. You know the stories. Quirky oral tradition says Sumaoro's magic came from a secret chamber filled with fetish charms, including the head of his own nephew, a snake with 7 eyes, and the horn of an antelope struck by lightning. And you know his weakness. Not his body, but his charm. Literally. A small, feather-tied talisman he wears near his ankle hidden, but real. The thing that holds his power. Your sister told you. She saw it in a dream, or in a fire, or maybe a little bird just whispered it in her ear. Who knows? She never says. But you believe her. So, in the thick of chaos, while blades clash and men cry and blood darkens the earth, you aim not for Sumaoro's head but his ankle. You throw, not a spear, a rooster feather, dipped in sacred ink, whispered over by your sister. And when it hits, the fog breaks. Just like that. The air clears. Sumaoro freezes, his horse falters. For the first time, he looks human, terrified. You rush him. He vanishes, disappears into the smoke, just gone. Coward? Sorcerer trick? Vanishing spell? No one knows. Historians still argue whether Sumaoro died in battle, fled into the mountains, or continued ruling small pockets of land under another name. What we do know, he never again threatened Mali. Your army surges. The Sasso collapse, leaderless, shaken. Your men press forward not with fury, but with purpose. This isn't vengeance, it's justice. By sunset, the field belongs to you, and the world is never the same again. You sit under a tree that night, blood drying on your robes, sword laid across your knees. The stars are clearer than they've ever been. You've won, but you don't smile, because victory is only the beginning. And empires? They don't build themselves. You rise the next morning before the sun. There's dew on your robe, blood on your sandals. Your sword smells like iron and ghosts. The battle is won, but the world doesn't pause for heroes. The birds still chirp. The grass still glistens. A goat somewhere bleats at absolutely nothing. And you're about to become something bigger than a general. You're going to become a king. Not a warlord, not a placeholder, not a holy rumor wrapped in riddle and exile. A king of a kingdom that doesn't really exist yet. Which, is a bit of a problem. The land is vast, fractured. Some people still think Mali is just Niani by another name. Others believe it was lost forever when Sumaoro cast his last shadow. You have tribes that worship trees, tribes that eat only fish, tribes that think a mango is proof of divine laughter. But what you do have? Loyalty, fresh and earned. 7 kings have sworn oaths. The people have whispered your name into their fires at night. And your army now includes horsemen who once rode against you. They look tired, hopeful, a little confused. So you call for a gathering. Not just any gathering. You call for a Kurukan Fuga, a kind of council, assembly, sacred parliament held under the open sky near the site of your victory at Kirina, beneath a great baobab tree, thick-trunked and ancient, whose roots remember things even the griots forgot. Mainstream historical fact. The Kurukan Fuga was the constitutional assembly following Sundiata's victory at Kirina, where he and allied leaders established the foundational laws and structure of the Mali Empire. You don't sit on a throne. Not yet. You sit on a woven mat beside elders and warlords, with your half-sister at your side, and the blacksmith's son watching everything with arms folded like he suspects someone's going to do something dramatic. He's probably right. Everyone's watching you, and you don't say much at first. You let the griots speak. They recite the names of kingdoms that stood with you, the names of those lost at Kirina, the names of rivers, ancestors, forgotten gods. The sound of it rolls over the crowd like distant thunder. It lasts hours. It's sacred. And somehow, it's perfect. Then you stand, and you speak, not with grandeur, but with gravity. You speak of unity, of healing, of a Mali not built on domination, but on interdependence. You name the peoples you will protect: Mandinka, Fulani, Soso, Soninke, Bozo. You speak of trade, of water routes, of food stores and safe roads. You speak of peace, a peace earned by the blood on your sword butt, not defined by it. And then only then you allow yourself to be crowned. Under the baobab tree, in the shade of memory, they place the lion crown on your head. Indigo robes trail behind you, gold bands on your arms, a staff carved with symbols older than language. You are no longer Sundiata the exile, Sundiata the hungry lion, Sundiata the crippled prince. You are Mansa Sundiata Keita, king of kings. The crowd erupts. Your sister grins, wide and proud. The blacksmith's son mutters, "Took him long enough." You smile. But it's not for the crown. It's because you see it now. The shape of Mali. You begin to build. Cities rise. You commission roads wide, safe, guarded. You reopen, markets crushed by so-so tyranny, trade booms. Ivory, gold, salt, cola nutsol flowing through your empire like veins of purpose. You move your capital to Nianais, your birthplace. But now, it's more than a hometown. It's a beacon. You rebuild its walls, expand its markets, carve its streets with drainage because sanitation matters, and no one rules well with a stomach bug. You establish a council of elders, not because you need advice, though you do, but because you know what it feels like to be dismissed. You've seen too many rulers surrounded by flatterers and cowards. You want the truth. Even when it's annoying, you promote griots to official roles. Because stories shape memory, and memory shapes power. You organize the military, not just warriors, but supply routes, medical stations, messengers who can run for days without stopping. You assign scouts to monitor neighboring kingdoms. You even create a postal system using talking drums and trained runners. Historians still argue whether Sundiata invented this network himself or built upon pre-existing systems. Either way, under your rule, communication becomes powerful, and the people feel it. Farmers find protection. Merchants find profits. Women find status in your courts and even in the army. You outlaw unnecessary war, regulate weights in the markets, and perhaps most radical of all, you forbid slavery within the empire. Captives from outside are still traded, but your own people? They are yours to protect. Quirky tidbit? Griots say you once disguised yourself as a beggar to test a new judge's fairness. When the man ruled against you, not knowing your identity, you promoted him on the spot. Then had him fainted, revived with hibiscus water. You begin to send emissaries far beyond your borders. To Ghana, to Songhai, even across the desert to places you've never seen. Word spreads. Mali is not just powerful. Mali is stable. And you? You walk among the people often, not like a tourist, like a guardian. They call you Simban Master Hunter. They gift you carved drums, folded cloths, new songs. And still, after all this time, you keep your mother's amulet tied at your waist. One night, as you sit by the river beneath a silver moon, your sister leans over and says, "You know this can't last forever." You nod. Not sadly, just knowingly. Empires rise, empires fall. But you've planted something deeper than rule. You've planted structure. You've woven meaning. And the lion who limped? He built a world that stands straight. It's been years now. The empire breathes under your rule, like a great and gentle beast basking in the sun. Malleor malespreads across hills and rivers, over gold-rich soil and salt-glittered deserts, pulsing with life, markets, music, and memory. It is no longer just a place on a map. It's a feeling, a rhythm, a weight in the air. And you're not just a king anymore. You're an anchor. Every morning you wake before the sun, not because you have to, but because you want to. You sit by your window, sip warm baobab tea, and listen to the city stir awake, drums in the distance. Roosters far off, footsteps in the courtyard. Somewhere, someone is reciting your laws to settle a trade dispute, and it makes you smile. But it's not all peace and palm wine. Ruling an empire is like juggling flaming ostrich eggs on a canoe. You will drop something eventually. Today, it's the iron tax. Blacksmiths from the eastern provinces are furious. They say the new tax on iron tools will bankrupt small crafters. The merchants in Niani disagree. They claim blacksmiths hoard too much, keep prices high. Both sides think you are the villain. You summon your council. They bicker. Someone quotes an ancestor. Someone else accuses the merchants of sorcery. Your sister, now your chief diplomat, raises one eyebrow, and silence falls like a dropped blade. You mediate. Calmly, deliberately, with the kind of balance you learned not from power, but from years of being underestimated. You end the meeting with a new pricing system and a quiet grin. Later, your war captain tells you, you didn't just dodge a revolt, you tap-danced on its nose. He's not wrong. Mainstream historical fact. Under Sundiata's reign, the Mali Empire became a model of political balance. Its governance structure allowed various ethnic groups to retain their customs under centralized rule, promoting stability across a diverse empire. And Mali is diverse. Oh, you'd forgotten just how diverse. There are fishermen who speak in bird metaphors, pastoralists who believe the moon is an old woman stirring porridge, market women who can calculate complex transactions without ever touching a cowrie shell, and griots who can recall names 600 years deep without blinking. It's not just a kingdom, it's a choir. Your role? Keep them in harmony. That means traveling. A lot. You visit villages wrapped in mist, cities baked in sun. You eat unfamiliar stews. You wear regional robe saffron in the desert, teal by the river, russet near the forest. You don't bring swords. You bring questions. Are the roads safe? Do the wells still flow? Does the judge treat you fairly? People look at you strangely at first. Why would the Mansaith, king of Kingsby, in their goat-scented courtyard, asking about firewood prices? You never explain. You just listen. That's your real power now. Not the army. not the title. Listening. One rainy season, you shelter in a thatched hut with a weaver who doesn't recognize you. She's old, half-blind, and smells like onion and lightning. You stay for days, helping her tie knots in a ceremonial cloth. When the storm passes, she gives you a single strip of it and says, "For the stranger who respects quiet." You carry it in your robe from then on. Quirky oral tradition. Some tales say Sundiata once ruled from under a mango tree for 7 weeks, refusing to enter the palace until the court proved they could govern themselves without him. The reason? He was testing their honesty and enjoying the mangoes. But not everything is mangoes and metaphor. Trouble stirs in the West. The Kingdom of Jolof is making noise-rating border villages, claiming that Mali's expansion has crossed ancestral lines. You send envoys. They return with bruises and broken messages. So, you ride. Not with a massive army this time, just a tight column of elite riders, gold-armored and silent as judgment. The King of Jolof expects thunder. You give him stillness. You dismount alone, step into his court, and speak only 2 sentences. This is not a conquest. This is a correction. He blinks. His guards shift. No one moves. You sit, you talk, you eat his food. You leave with a signed treaty and a new ally. Historians still argue whether this event was a battle, a bluff, or pure diplomacy. But what matters is that Jolof never raided again. And this becomes your pattern. You put out fires with words. You mend wounds with rituals. You learn which festivals not to visit. Looking at you, Drum Goat Daystill, not sure what that was about. You don't rule through fear. You rule through presence. People say the Mansa walks like a story being told. One day, you host a delegation from far beyond the Sahara. Traders from the Maghreb. They bring scrolls, spices, and tales of cities where books are more valuable than camels. You sit with their scholars. You trade ideas, not conquests. You begin funding schools, patronizing scholars, commissioning maps of the stars, the rivers, even the trade winds. You create something rare, a state that values intellect as much as gold. You even begin constructing a massive library in Niani, a center of learning, a place for griots and scholars, for herbalists and mathematicians, for dreamers and poets. Your people start calling it the Lion's Mind. You pretend not to like the name, but you do. A lot. One evening, your sister finds you watching the construction from a rooftop. She sits beside you, her legs swinging like a child's. "You're building things no one can burn," she says. You nod. Then ask, "Do you ever miss the chase?" She smiles. "No, but I miss the quiet." You both sit in it for a while. Mali hums below you. And for once, you don't need to fix anything. You just exist. Historians still argue whether Sundiata's emphasis on education and oral tradition directly influenced later centers of learning like Timbuktu. But the seeds he planted of scholarship, law, cultural respect would grow into one of the greatest intellectual legacies in African history. You go to bed that night under a mosquito net embroidered with lions. You fall asleep to the sounds of the city laughter, trade, footsteps, song, and dreams of rivers that remember your name. You wake to drums. Not the celebratory kind, not the market pulse, and definitely not the slow, gourd-thumping lullabies you like to hum when no one's listening. These drums are fast, sharp, urgent. They don't ask, they warn. You sit up. You're still half dreaming something about your sister arguing with a camel, but it fades as your guards burst in. One speaks fast, too fast, but you catch the key words. Sasso, return, north border. You're on your feet before the guard can even bow. So much for a peaceful season. Word spreads quick. A Soso warband has attacked a border village. Just 50 men, armed and shouting, wearing the old emblems of Sumaoro's fallen reign. A ghost army, some call it. But ghosts don't burn granaries. You ride out by dusk. Not with an army, just a small force, swift and quiet, like a scalpel. You know this isn't a real threat. Not yet. But it is a message. And you have no intention of letting it go unanswered. The village is half smoldering when you arrive. Goats roam loose. A boy with a bloody ankle limps through the ash, dragging a flute. You dismount and walk the ruins. You talk to elders, mothers, farmers. You listen. You always listen. And then, you make a decision that surprises even your captains. You rebuild the village that night. Your soldiers form bucket lines. Your sister organizes food distribution. You personally help lift charred beams off fallen huts. You pour water over embers with your bare hands. Someone hands you a mango, and you don't even pause before biting into it. Because leadership, you've learned, is sometimes less about grand speeches and more about showing up with calloused hands and sweat on your forehead. Mainstream historical fact. Sundiata Keita's leadership was marked by swift and visible action, often appearing personally in crisis zones to maintain unity and public trust across the empire. You leave the next morning, riding hard for Niani. But the road feels heavier. Because something's shifting, the empire is growing. And with growth comes friction. Not all the friction is from outsiders. Some of it is internal. Whispers from jealous chiefs. Arguments about trade boundaries. A merchant prince from the east who thinks the Lion of Mali has gotten too tame. You host a council. This time, it's tense. They're shouting. A spear gets knocked over. Someone accuses someone else of hoarding salt bricks. Your sister raises both eyebrows and somehow silences a room of 30 men with just her eyebrows. Still, you listen. And you learn that empires, like bodies, need regular checkups. You adjust grain quotas, reassign judges, create a new circuit of traveling messengers who can settle disputes faster. You name them the quiet ones. Their symbol? A reed bent in wind. Because quiet strength bends but never breaks. You also bring back an old festival. The Festival of the River Spirits. It hasn't been celebrated since before Sumaoro's rise. You revive it across the empire, music, feasts, offerings by the water's edge. People come in droves. Some say you did it for morale. You did it because joy is a strategy. Empires don't last on fear alone. They last when people believe they're part of something alive. Quirky oral tradition. During one of these festivals, it's said that Sundiata challenged a local musician to a dance-off. The musician won. Sundiata claimed it was a tactical loss to boost morale. No one believed him. But your greatest challenge now isn't external. It's succession. You're older. Your stride is slower. Your bones creak like old drums. You're still sharp, but the mornings take longer. You watch the young warriors train and wonder which of them will carry the weight next. You have a son. 2, actually. And a daughter who could outdebate an entire council blindfolded. But succession isn't just about blood. It's about balance, legacy. You begin to test them. Quietly, carefully. You send your eldest to mediate a dispute. He returns with a bruised lip and a signed treaty. Good start. You send your second son to oversee a caravan through dangerous territory. He comes back with every guard intact and 3 extra camels. Suspicious, but effective. Your daughter? She organizes a grain relief effort during a famine without you knowing. You find out because a traitor tried to bribe her and left with no teeth and a new respect for matriarchs. Historians still argue whether Sundiata named a direct heir before his death or if Mali adopted a council-based system for succession. What's clear is that his descendants would rule for generations, some strong, some weak, all standing in his shadow. You don't name anyone yet, but you start writing things down. Well, not you personally. You dictate to a griot. He scratches your words onto leather scrolls with ink made from ash and gum. You record laws, customs, warnings, advice. Some of it poetic, some of it just grumpy. You call it the Mandan Charter. The griots call it the voice of the lion. It's not flashy, but it will outlast you. And one night, as you sit alone beneath the stars, you feel it. The world shifting again. Not in danger, not in panic. Just shifting. You know what that means. It means the time of war has passed. The time of thrones and conquests is winding down. Now begins the time of structure, of stories, of slow, quiet strength. You close your eyes. You remember the boy who crawled, the tree branch that helped you stand, the battle at Kirina, the baobab crown, your mother's silence, your sister's laugh. You remember everything, and then you open your eyes. Still here, still the lion, but perhaps, just perhaps, ready to rest. The news spreads slowly at first. Soft whispers, careful words, griots bowing their heads before finishing songs, servants lighting candles without being asked. There's no proclamation, no royal thunderclap, just a hush-tone that flows through Niani like a change in the wind. The lion has gone still, and the empire holds its breath. Your passing isn't dramatic. No lightning splits the sky. No thrones collapse in protest. You simply stop, like the final beat of a perfectly timed drum. The morning after, your sister sits beside you for hours, her fingers wrapped around your old talisman. She says nothing, because there's nothing left to say. And yet everything still needs doing. Your son steps forward. He doesn't cry, not where anyone can see, but he takes your staff with both hands and plants it in the ground like a promise. The court watches and nods, because Mali does not fall. It rises. Your burial is a quiet marvel. No golden chariots, no army parades, just a sacred grove, draped in silence, wrapped in chants older than the empire. They place you beneath a baobab tree. Not the one where you were crowned, but one farther north, where the wind speaks less and listens more. The grave is simple, but the grief, epic. People flood Niani, from the far coast, from the desert's edge, from tiny villages you visited just once, but somehow remembered by name. They come barefoot, on horseback, in caravans. They bring spices, cloth, carved figures, salt, fruit, and songs. So many songs. Mainstream historical fact. Sundiata's death is believed to have occurred around 1255, though exact records vary. His legacy endured through oral tradition, written accounts centuries later, and the continued strength of the Mali Empire for generations after his rule. Your son delivers a speech. Short, sincere, strong. He doesn't try to be you, and that's how you know he'll do just fine. He begins a slow transition, drastic changes. He expands the council, sends tribute to neighboring kingdoms, reaffirms Mali's protections for traders and scholars. He finishes the library you started, adding a garden filled with flowering trees and shaded reading platforms. It's named Sagalon's Sanctuary. You'd have smiled. The griots get busy. They travel fast, spreading your story like fire caught in silk. From Timbuktu to Tekrur, from the hills of Fouta Djallon to the edge of Lake Chad. They recount the crawl, the staff, the rise, the war, the laws, the mango jokes, everything. And with each retelling, you become more than a man. You become story. The Lion King, The crippled prince, the hunter of justice, the architect of peace. Children name their goats after you again. It's fine now. You're gone. Historians still argue whether Sundiata's image as a flawless hero was entirely accurate or a product of romantic oral tradition. Truth is, it doesn't matter. People remember what they need. And what they need is the story of a boy who could not walk, but changed the world anyway. And oh, Mali flourishes. The cities pulse with trade. The roads gleam with copper and hoof marks. Salt caravans thread through the desert like silk worms. Scholars debate theology beside market stalls. Griots perform nightly, weaving your tale into new verses, new rhythms. Your grandchildren learn your name not as an obligation, but as an inspiration. Gold still pours from the mines in Bambouk and Bure, but more valuable now, the reputation, the structure, the stability, the pride. You left them something they didn't even know they needed. A center that holds. Quirky tradition. In some villages, mothers still tap the ground lightly when their children crawl for the first time, whispering, "Walk strong," like Sundiata. It's not a spell. Not exactly. Just a kind of ancestral encouragement. A quiet push from the past. Even other empires nod in your direction. Ghana, reborn in fragments, reshapes itself in your image. The Songhai watch. Learn. They see how Mali governs with both the drum and the pen. One day, they'll rise, too, but not yet. Because Mali still belongs to the lion's echo. Your laws endure. They're recited before court begins. They're painted onto scrolls. They're stitched into cloth. Merchants hang fragments of your codes in their shops for good luck. Warriors wear charms shaped like staffs. Even judges use phrases you coined on in particular. Let no man eat alone what was built by many hands. It becomes a motto, a mantra, a warning. And so, while your body rests beneath the earth, your voice does not. It lives. In the lull of a rainstorm over Niani. In the chant of students in the library. In the slow, careful walk of a child learning to stand. One day, centuries from now, your empire will fade. Time will pull its corners loose. The gold will be gone. The scrolls scattered. The palaces dust. But someone will light a fire. And a griot will lean in low and sure and begin. Let me tell you of the boy who crawled, the mother who waited, and the lion who rose. And in that moment, you return. The seasons continue their endless turning. Rain over the rice fields. Dry winds across the dunes. The long hum of crickets at dusk. Mali carries on not as an echo, but as a living, breathing force. You may have stepped off the stage, but the empire you carved from the dust does not stop humming your name. In Niani, the palace no longer needs your footsteps to feel full. Your son rules from the same court, but he's added his own Tucha new market quarter, a temple to honor ancestral spirits, a school for scribes. He doesn't imitate you. He interprets you. And that, you'd say, is even better. Trade expands. The great trans-Saharan routes carried by camel, guarded by steel, mapped in memory stretch farther west and farther north than you ever dreamed. Merchants now bring tales of strange ships along the far coast, foreign coins, spices that smell like new kinds of thunder. But still, when they reach Mali, they lower their voices. They respect the lion. It's not just your strength they remember. It's your order, your fairness, the peace you built. Mainstream historical fact. Mali's wealth and political systems became renowned throughout Africa and beyond, eventually impressing even Islamic chroniclers like Ibn Battuta and the Spanish cartographer Abraham Cresques. Your descendants continue to rule, some wisely, some clumsily, one or two disastrously, but even their worst days look brighter beside kingdoms without your foundation. Your name becomes a unit of measurement. Is he as steady as Sundiata? A nervous leader asks his council before making a risky decision. Will this last like Sundiata's law? Whispers a merchant surveying a business deal. Your story is recited at weddings and funerals, before long journeys, and at naming ceremonies for children born into turbulent seasons. And sometimes, without warning, something unusual happens. A child in a small village stares too long at a lion-shaped carving and says, "He's not asleep, just waiting." Or a griot in the hills forgets his place mid-story and suddenly begins to weep. Or a woman in the market looks up from her basket and swears she heard a staff hitting stone. It doesn't matter whether they're right. It matters that your memory walks. A quirky fringe tradition claims that once every 100 years, a lion appears at the base of the baobab where you're buried. Not to roar, just to sit, to remind the earth who shaped it. And speaking of that baobab, it grows differently now. Thicker, stronger. Some say its bark peels in patterns like script, that you can read it if you stand close enough and squint. Your sister had it ringed with stones before she passed. Now it's a pilgrimage site. People don't just come to mourn. They come to reflect, to think, to remember a truth even older than Molly, that sometimes the quiet ones, the late bloomers, the underestimated, the forgotten are the ones who rise and hold the sky together. Historians still argue about your origin. Was the prophecy real? Did you really crawl until 7? Did a rooster feather defeat Sumaoro? Does it matter? Because truth is not always about what happened. Truth is about what stays. And you? You stayed. You're in every griot's song, every child's first stumble toward standing, every dream of a nation built on justice and strength. You're in the long road that curves gently through the fields, leading not to war but to home. Mali becomes a model. Other kingdoms copy your laws, your council structure. Even your title, Mansa, echoes through time like a heartbeat. Traders from Morocco to Mombasa invoke your empire as a reference point for what is possible. Even centuries later, when Mali has passed its golden age, when the Songhai rise and Europe starts peering greedily toward Africa's shores, your story remains untouched, unshaken, unburied. The world changes. Empires shift. Borders vanish. Cities crumble. But somehow, you remain. And perhaps that's the secret you knew all along? That real kingship isn't about how loud you rule, but how long you echo. You know what's funny? For someone who spent so much of your early life trying not to be noticed crawling through courtyards, hiding behind your mother's robes, you've become one of the most visible figures in the history of West Africa. You're everywhere now. Not just in story, in symbols, in scrolls carved into walls, sung across the plains in voices that never met each other but somehow know the same rhythm. The Lion of Mali. And the farther Mali stretches, the more your legacy grows. Salt caravans pass through your former battlefields, now fields of millet and onion. Gold bars stamped with your seal slide across counting tables in towns you never visited. Camels walk paths worn into the earth by your war horses. And somewhere, a child learns your name not from a griot, but from a page. Yes, pages. Because your descendants are embracing something new, something you always valued, even if you couldn't yet fully build it. Written knowledge. Mainstream historical fact. Under Sundiata's successors, particularly Mansa Musa, Mali would become not only a wealthy empire, but also one of the most literate and scholarly centers in the world, with cities like Timbuktu flourishing as hubs of Islamic learning and African scholarship. The seeds you planted? They bloom into books. The Islamic scholars arrive in waves, some by camel, some by foot, some with robes that trail in the dust like folded clouds. They bring philosophy, astronomy, medicine, and your court built with care, kept with wisdom, welcomes them. At first, it's awkward. The griots are skeptical. What good is writing? they grumble, if the words don't sing. But you'd told them long ago in your quiet way, there's more than one kind of song. Eventually, the scribes and griots learn to work side by side. They trade techniques, ink and voice, scroll and stringed instrument, oral and written. The lions mind your library, now expanded by your grandsonies, filled with both. One scroll records your laws in beautiful Sahelian calligraphy. Next to it, a griot inscribes the same in poetry, to be sung at festivals. Dual memory. That's your legacy. Your descendants use it well. They build courts in the image of your first council. They uphold your principle of justice rooted in community. They host scholars from Cairo, Fez, and beyond. They don't just preserve Mali's power, they project it. And your name? It anchors every conversation. You do remember what the lion said. Would Sundiata approve? Don't make me fetch the staff of Keita. Okay, that last one's mostly a joke. Kind of. Your dynasty holds, for a time. Not perfectly. There are stumbles, missteps. An arrogant nephew who builds a marble tower inside the granary. A brief civil war when 3 cousins decide they all want the throne at once. But the bones of the empire? Still strong. Because you made sure of it. Even centuries later, when Mali's borders begin to shrink, when external threats rise and internal politics sag, people still hold Mali's golden age as the ideal. And at the center of that age, you. Sundiata Keita. Quirky oral tradition. Some say your walking staff was buried standing upright, and if it ever falls, Mali will fall with it. Others say it already fell once, but your spirit caught it just in time. Your name crosses oceans. Not through conquest, through story. European explorers, those odd armor-wearing men with questionable map-shear of you through Moorish scholars and African traders. They write your name awkwardly in Latin script, each letter trying and failing to carry the weight of your legacy. But the attempt matters. Even they know you're a big deal. And Timbuktu, once a minor outpost, becomes a city of renown. Students travel thousands of miles to study there. Poets write about you not as a character, but as a founder of order itself. In fact, some say your laws influenced early African Islamic legal thinking. Historians still argue whether Mali's legal traditions blended Islamic Sharia with Sundiata's secular codes, or whether they developed in parallel. Either way, Mali under your influence was neither fully traditional nor fully Islamic, but something brilliantly hybrid. A system that worked, that served its people. That made Mali more than a place. It made it an idea. And ideas? They live forever. You begin to appear in other epics. The Epic of Askia, the Tales of the Songhai. Even coastal stories, far beyond your empire's reach, begin referencing a crippled lion who roared so loud the mountains opened their eyes. Do mountains have eyes? Doesn't matter. The metaphor stands. And the griots? Oh, they don't stop. In fact, they evolve. Some sing your story with flutes, others with balafons, or strings crafted from gourds and hide. Some use only voice-deep, trembling, hypnotic. Every village adds their own flavor. Some versions emphasize your childhood, others, your mother's magic. One even claims your sister turned into a falcon after your death to guard the empire from above. You'd probably laugh. Or raise an eyebrow. Either way, you'd be proud. Because it's not about accuracy. It's about honor. Your empire may bend in the centuries to come bend under new rulers, under new pressures, under the weight of time itself. But you don't bend. You become the center. The lion whose paw print shaped a continent. The voice that whispers still beneath the baobab, behind the griot's tongue, inside the heart of every child who stands, no matter how long they had to crawl. You wouldn't believe what your empire has become. No, really. If someone had described this Mali to you while you were still dragging your feet through exile, you probably would have laughed or at least squinted very suspiciously. Because this isn't just an empire anymore. It's an engine. A breathing, gold-veined, culture-cradling, scholar-summoning giant. And every part of it, somehow still shaped by your hand. Your trade routes, once a dream, are now highways of commerce. Goods move like rivers gold, salt, ivory, leather, iron, cola nuts, spices. You can smell wealth now. It has a scent, warm, dusty, tinged with camel sweat and jasmine. Caravans stretch for miles across the Sahel, loaded with goods and guarded by men who wear your emblem, a lion beneath the crescent moon. But you always knew Mali's greatest export wouldn't be gold. It would be knowledge. Timbuktu has blossomed, not into a fortress, but into something rarer, a place where learning is sacred. The Sankore University hosts thousands of students, some from as far away as Cairo, Mecca, and Morocco. Scholars arrive in droves, their robes flowing, scrolls clutched to their chests like treasures. They study astronomy, mathematics, philosophy, law, and poetry, because even geniuses need to feel something. Mainstream historical fact. By the 14th century, under the influence of Sundiata's legacy and the expansions of later rulers like Mansa Musa, Timbuktu had become a world-renowned center for Islamic and secular learning. At its height, it housed over 25 students and an estimated 700 manuscripts. Libraries multiply like baobab seeds in a storm. Some are public, others private, hidden in family vaults and guarded like gold. Pages crinkle with the weight of centuries. Script flows like wind across vellum. The air in those rooms tastes like ink and candle soot. And what's wild? Many of those scrolls begin with your name. Not as author, but as origin. May this knowledge honor the law of the lion. You don't just inspire scholars. You inspire artists. Cloth weavers tell your story in thread. Dancers embody your battle at Kirina with ankle bells and spears made of bamboo. Even architects take cues from your legacy, designing buildings that blend form and function, that rise and hold. A new generation of griots emerges. You'd recognize the spark in their eyes, the way they pause for drama, the calculated silence before they say, "And then the lion rose." They're bolder now, sometimes embellishing a little more than necessary. One version has you turning into actual fire at Kirina. Another swears you tamed a crocodile with your voice. You'd roll your eyes, then smile, because the core remains true. You did rise. You did unify. You did leave something that refuses to die. Quirky tidbit. In a remote fishing village, an annual festival includes a performance where one elder pretends to be Sundiata's walking stick and demands the children feed him mangoes or he'll refuse to hold the king up. The kids go absolutely wild. But as Mali grows, new challenges arrive. Whispers of discontent. Local rulers who think the empire's too big, too impersonal. A few desert raiders growing bold, led by self-proclaimed sorcerers claiming to wield the lost magic of Sumaoro. Cute. And there's always the matter of succession. Again, Mali's crown doesn't pass easily. There are too many contenders, too many old grievances. Even with councils, advisors, wise women, griots, and astrologers, someone always wants more than they're owed. And when the throne wobbles, the borders tremble. You would have predicted this. Empires, like houses, creak as they age. And yet they hold. Why? Because you didn't just rule. You taught people how to rule. Your heirs still recite the Mandan Charter at coronations. They still uphold the council structure. They still pay tribute to the memory of the 7 kings who once swore allegiance under starlight. Even when they mess up and, oh, they still course correct using your methods. Remember how the lion settled the iron dispute, they say. Remember how the lion rebuilt the village before the sun rose. Even your enemies respect you. There's a story of a foreign king who refused to attack a Mali outpost because Sundiata's ghost might still be awake. Another tale tells of a trader from the north who saw your seal on a document and kissed it before reading it. You didn't leave fear behind. You left reverence. And slowly, over generations, that reverence becomes something even deeper. It becomes identity. Historians still argue whether your unification of the Mande world was a temporary alignment or a long-term redefinition of West African political unity. But culturally, spiritually, linguistically, it's stuck. People don't just say they're from Mali. They say they're from the Lion's Land. They use your story to teach bravery, diplomacy, patience, and perhaps your favorite timing, because yours was exquisite. You rose when Mali needed you. You struck when the tyrant grew too bold. You stepped back when the next voice was ready. You whispered when shouting would have shattered the moment. That timing, it echoes still. In every merchant who waits for the right moment to sell. In every child who pauses, breathless, before taking their first step. In every griot who closes their eyes just before saying, and in that moment, the lion stood. There's a saying now, whispered by travelers under moonlight, or muttered by griots between songs when the crowd gets too loud to hear the subtleties. You don't walk into Mali, you arrive into memory. Because by now, Mali has become something else, something larger. It's not just a kingdom anymore, it's a concept, a rhythm, a standard, a mirror held up to all the little kingdoms trying to become something bigger than themselves. Other rulers across the continent, even some far beyond it, reference your empire the way an apprentice references a master's old sketches. Your name is shorthand for stability, and still it grows. Your capital, Niani, swells like a drumskin in the heat. New neighborhoods, new shrines, new courts. Trade districts now bustle with merchants from places you've never seen. Tuareg from the desert north, Wolof from the salt-rich coast, merchants from Egypt, even pale-skinned traders whose languages twist like braided vines. Some look confused when they hear your name. Who is this Sundiata? But then, a griot steps forward and explains, not with facts, with a story. And the strangers lean forward, because even they can feel the shape of you in the spaces between words. Mainstream historical fact. By the 14th century, Mali was among the wealthiest and most influential empires in the world, particularly under the reign of Mansa Musa, Sundiata's descendant. Its influence extended across West Africa, into the Islamic world, and even reached parts of Europe through second-hand accounts. You'd be proud of Mansa Musa. Your grandson, or great-grandson records get fuzzy, doesn't just keep Mali thriving, he launches it into the heavens. His Hajj to Mecca becomes legendary. A caravan of thousands, gold so abundant it allegedly devalues currency in Cairo for years. But he never forgets his roots. At every major stop, he tells people where he's from. Not just Mali, but the land of Sundiata. He funds mosques. He expands Timbuktu's learning centers. He invites scholars to return with him. He names schools after your allies, libraries after your council, fountains after your mother. He carries your flame and fans it. And back home, the griots do their part too. They don't just preserve your story. They evolve it. They add new chapters. They recite your battles in verse. They paint your childhood with symbols. They build bridges between generations with rhythm and rhyme. Your crawl becomes a lullaby. Your rise becomes a coming-of-age tale. Your battle becomes an allegory for truth conquering illusion. Your reign becomes the measure by which all future justice is weighed. And here's the strangest part. You become humble. Not in memory gods, no. You're a legend. But in the details. You're not perfect. You make mistakes. You argue with your council. You once miscalculate a grain levy and nearly cause a merchant strike. You forget your sister's birthday. She forgives you, eventually. But those imperfections, they make the story stronger. Because now, you are relatable. You're not a distant god on a throne. You're a person. A lion who earned his mane. And the people of Mali? They begin to emulate you, not by quoting you, but by acting like you. They mediate disputes with dignity. They walk with awareness. They speak truth to power, even when it shakes. They stand up slowly, but when they do, they don't back down. Quirky tradition. In some households, when a toddler stands for the first time, the family gently drops a kernel of roasted millet on the floor and says, "For Sundiata." No one remembers why exactly. They just do it. But every legacy has shadows. Mali, for all its beauty, carries contradictions. Slavery still exists, especially of outsiders. The caste system grows rigid in places. Wealth begins to pool too deeply in certain families. Not every judge remembers your laws. Not every trader plays fair. Bandits prowl the fringes. Droughts strain the grain reserves. And sometimes, just sometimes, someone in power tries to rewrite history. Erase your limping. Remove the exile. Paint you as flawless. But the griots? Oh no. They fight back. Because to erase your weakness is to erase your strength. And they know better. They say, "The lion crawled before he roared. The staff came before the sword, and the silence came before the drum." Your story is kept sacred, not for worship, for wisdom. Even as new kings rise, even as invaders look south with hungry eyes, even as the world changes paper, replaces parchment, foreign ships begin to crawl up the coast, new gods whisper from unfamiliar tongue, your name holds. It anchors. It guides. And in one little corner of Mali, a child sneaks out of bed one night and climbs onto the roof. She looks up at the stars. She listens. She hears the quiet, the same kind you heard in exile, the same kind that hums before the rise. And she whispers, "I will build something." And just like that, another lion begins to crawl. Evening falls gently over Mali. Not with spectacle, but with a sigh. The kind of golden, long-shadowed hush that makes markets slow and drums soften. A woman calls her children inside. A camel trader counts his coin. Smoke drifts from cooking fires. The empire exhales. You, of course, aren't physically present anymore. But everywhere feels a little like you. A carved lion's head above a palace gate. A staff-shaped fountain in a village square. A proverb whispered as a father ties his son's sandals. Balance first, then step. Mali remembers. Your name is recited before council meetings. Your judgments are referenced in court. Your epic is still taught by griots, yes, but also by scholars. The university libraries that once hoarded scrolls now welcome them. And your laws? They've evolved into something richer. They flex. They breathe. But they never stray far from your original rhythm. And yet, time marches. Empires shift. The Songhai, once your cautious ally, grow stronger, bolder. They expand where Mali contracts. They probe your trade routes. They challenge border forts. It's not sudden. It's a slow erosion. The kind no map can capture until it's already done. Some call it decline. But decline isn't always collapse. Sometimes it's a handing over. A baton passed, however, reluctantly between generations of greatness. Mainstream historical fact. By the 15th century, the Mali Empire's influence began to fade as internal strife and external pressure from the rising Songhai Empire weakened its hold. Eventually, Songhai would absorb much of Mali's territory and influence. But here's the thing. Songhai doesn't erase you. They build on you. They adopt your structures, your market systems, your cultural hierarchy. They respect your laws. Even their scholars cite your precedents. And when they commission their own epic, guess who's mentioned on page 1? Exactly. And the griots? Oh, they're still talking. But now they add a verse, one that wasn't there when you were alive. The last verse. It's not about battle, not about law, not about justice. It's about letting go. They tell of your final days, the way you walked slower, listened more, the way you looked to the horizon and smiled, not because it was yours, but because someone else would carry it forward. It's the griot's way of reminding us that even lions rest. You become a mirror. Leaders look into your story to see what they are and what they're not. When a Mansa grows too cruel, the griots say, he forgets how Sundiata walked among the people. When one grows too soft, they say, the lion knew when to bare teeth. Your myth, ironically, keeps rulers honest. And beyond Africa? Yes, there too. The Mediterranean whispers your name. European scholars write confused accounts of a golden black king who could bend rivers and silence tyrants. Maps name Mali, poorly drawn but reverent. Traders speak of a land where justice has a taste like millet and mango and iron. Quirky fringe tale. One Portuguese sailor swore he saw your face carved into the stars above Timbuktu. Another claimed his compass stopped working until he recited your name 3 times. That's probably just sailor stuff, but still fun. Time continues. New invaders arrive first with trade, then with ships, then with flags. The world starts redrawing itself without asking permission. But your empire still echoes, especially in the quiet. A fisherman in Jenne casts his net and hums the chorus of your epic under his breath. A merchant in Gao greets the sunrise by facing west toward your grave. A teacher in Kano lifts a dusty scroll and tells her students, this came from Sundiata's seed. And in the smallest, simplest moments, your spirit returns. A mother teaching her daughter to carry water. Balance first, then step. A soldier hesitating before drawing his sword. Only the staff can say if war is wise. A boy watching ants carry breadcrumbs and whispering, that's what Mali looks like. You chuckle at that one. Because, yes, even ants know structure. And still there's more. In South America, Caribbean islands, Brazil, places where descendants of Mali's people were scattered against their will, your story survives in fractured form. A melody here, a proverb there. A rhythm pounded into a drum by hands that remember even when the mind forgets. They don't always know your name, but they know the feeling of standing, of building, of rising from a crawl and saying, I am here and I matter. Your story, like a river, finds new courses. Historians still argue whether the details of your epic are literal history or layered metaphor, whether you crawled or stood, whether the battle was as clean as the griots say. But in the end, it doesn't matter, because every version leads to the same truth. You took a scattered people and gave them structure. You gave them pride. You gave them a story. And now, that story walks, not as a ghost, as a guide. As long as feet touch soil, as long as songs hold memory, as long as lions still rise from silence, you will live. It's night in Mali, a wide, velvet night, stitched with stars that flicker like old memories. Somewhere, a drum echoes from a far-off village. A baby cries. A hyena laughs in the bush. And the river the one you once watched as a boy, unsure whether it flowed for you or against you, glides along like a slow, dark thought. This is the Molly you left. Still breathing. Still whispering your name. But there's something different now. Something softer. You're not just in history anymore. You're in the bones of the world. In the quiet gestures. In the customs too old to trace, too beloved to abandon. You've become background truth. Mainstream historical fact. Though the Mali Empire would eventually fragment and lose political dominance, its legacy continued through culture, language, and law across West Africa and into the diaspora. Elements of Sundiata's structure remain in modern legal traditions and oral histories today. But tonight isn't about scholars. It's about you. You, standing barefoot in that dust. You, crawling past the Snickers. You, wrapping your fingers around a staff and rising. You, gathering allies not through fear, but through quiet gravity. You, becoming king not with a roar but with a reason. And somehow, even centuries after your passing, the world hasn't stopped needing your story. A story of slow strength. Of silent dignity. Of a boy everyone underestimated who changed everything, not all at once, not with sorcery, but with stamina. Because that's the truth, isn't it? The most powerful empires aren't built in lightning. They're built in the waiting. The long breath before the leap. The years of listening before speaking. The decision to walk away from vengeance and towards something greater. Quirky tradition. In a quiet corner of Mali, there's a ritual where elders place their hand on a child's back before the naming ceremony and whisper, "Keita walks with you." The meaning's debated, but it feels a lot like saying, "Stand strong. Someone already showed you how." Your name lives in more than monuments. It lives in the pauses people take before acting. It lives in the little leaders, the market mothers, the goat herders, the young students who lead with care instead of ego. It lives in the griot's voice, cracked but steady, as they gather a crowd and begin. There once was a prince who could not walk, and the crowd leans in, because they already know how it ends. You become a kind of lullaby, a comfort, not because the world is easy, but because you made it possible to endure. You taught Mali to hold, to bend but never break, to remember. And now the fire crackles low. The drums have faded. The stars keep their vigil. And your story, your crawl, your rise, your crown settles gently into the minds of a new generation. Not as a history lesson, as a guidepost, as a dream, as a promise, as someone to return to when the night grows long and the path ahead feels too steep. Because you've already shown us, we can stand, we can lead, we can build something that lasts. We just have to take the first step, even if we start on our knees. Now the fire has burned low, and the night has grown still. You lie there, warm beneath your blanket, the weight of the story, like a soft drumbeat against your chest. The lion, once loud, is quiet, now not gone, but resting, just like you. The world outside your window is dark and steady, and if you listen closely, maybe you can hear it breathing too. Maybe, just maybe, you feel a little stronger. Because if a child who couldn't walk could shape an empire, if a woman mocked for her, silence could raise a king. If a forgotten exile could return and heal a kingdom torn by fear, then maybe, in your own way, in your own time, you can build something beautiful too. You don't need gold, or a crown, or a prophecy whispered under starlight. You just need a little patience, a little courage, and a reason to rise. So let go of the day now. Let the noise drift far away. Let the story settle over you like a lion's mane. the kind that wraps you up not to frighten, but to protect. The griots are quiet now. The scrolls are sealed. The drums have hushed, and the wind carries the softest whisper. You're part of it now. So rest. Dream in gold dust and indigo. And remember, whenever you feel like you're crawling, that's just the part before you stand. End of story. Have a sweet dreams.